I'm Nadia Jani and you're watching A News. Let's take a look at today's top stories. Trump secures total and permanent access to Greenland in a new deal with NATO. The US, Ukraine and Russia head to Abu Dhabi for their first trilateral talks to end the war. And the US unveils plans for a new post-war Gaza. First this morning, Greenland has become the focus of fresh transatlantic tensions after Donald Trump said the United States is negotiating what he described as permanent access to the Arctic island. The remarks prompted emergency talks among European leaders and renewed coordination with NATO. It comes as Denmark and Greenland insist their sovereignty is not up for discussion.
Greenland has become the latest flashpoint in strained transatlantic relations after US President Donald Trump said Washington is negotiating permanent and unrestricted access to the Arctic island. The comments alarmed European leaders, prompting emergency talks and renewed coordination with NATO, even as Trump ruled out taking Greenland by force and stepped back from tariff threats.
There was really a negotiation, but it's infinity. The time limit is infinity, meaning there is no time limit, it's forever. We can do anything we want, we can do military, we can do anything we want. And it's being negotiated, and let's see what happens. I think it'll be good.
Trump said any deal would be carried out alongside NATO, framing it as a collective security effort.
We're all going to work together, and actually NATO is going to be involved with us. We're going to be doing in conjunction, parts of it in conjunction with NATO, which is really the way it should be.
But European leaders quickly drew red lines, with Denmark and Greenland stressing that sovereignty is non-negotiable while remaining open to deeper Arctic security cooperation.
The threat of US tariffs, the threat of the US taking Greenland by force seem to be off the table for now. But this meeting of European leaders has been an exercise in how exactly to deal with what some officials have described as a new normal when it comes to transatlantic relations. Squarely, a huge focus of these talks have been on the issue of Greenland, how to advance things with Washington going forward.
At an emergency summit in Brussels, EU leaders said unity and restraint helped diffuse the immediate crisis.
It was very clear in the discussion that we were successful in withstanding by being firm but non-escalatory and, most importantly, very united.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen acknowledged Europe has underinvested in Arctic security and said that must now change.
We have collectively underinvested in the Arctic and Arctic security, so now it's high time to step up and to build on what we already achieved.
NATO military chiefs warn of rising risks in the Arctic, citing increased coordination between Russia and China. Concerns echoed on both sides of the Atlantic. For Denmark and Greenland, cooperation is welcome, but control is not.
Russia says it will hold security talks with the United States and Ukraine in Abu Dhabi on Friday. It comes after late-night discussions between President Vladimir Putin and US envoys in Moscow. The Kremlin says any lasting peace will depend on resolving territorial disputes, while Kyiv says that issue remains unresolved. Here's more.
Russia says it will hold three-way security talks with the United States and Ukraine in Abu Dhabi on Friday, following late-night discussions in Moscow between President Vladimir Putin and US envoys. The meeting, which lasted around 4 hours, was described by the Kremlin as substantive and frank, but no breakthrough was announced. Thursday's talks involved senior Russian officials and US representatives, including Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff and his son-in-law Jared Kushner. They were joined by Josh Gruenbaum, newly appointed as a senior advisor to Trump's Board of Peace. A senior Kremlin aide said Russia's position remains unchanged, stressing that a lasting settlement would not be possible without agreement on territory. Moscow insists the issue must be settled under a formula discussed previously with Washington, while also saying it remains interested in a diplomatic solution. At the same time, Russia warned it would continue military operations until its goals are met. Meanwhile, in Davos, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said a document outlining US security guarantees for Ukraine was complete, but admitted that territorial questions remain unresolved.
We speak about one issue, which is the most difficult, which been not solved, and I think that trilateral meetings maybe will show each other variants. It's all about the eastern part of our country. It's all about the land. This is the issue which been not solved yet.
US President Donald Trump, on his way back from Davos, also weighed in, saying both leaders now appear ready to strike a deal.
And you know, what's happened here is there were times when Putin didn't want to make a deal, times when Zelensky didn't want to make a deal. And it was like opposite types. Now I think they both want to make a deal, but we'll find out.
Meanwhile, fighting continued on the ground. Russian strikes hit 2 localities in southeastern Ukraine on Thursday, killing 1 person and injuring more than 20, according to local officials. Homes and apartment buildings were damaged in Zaporizhia region, while a combined drone and missile attack in Kryvyi Rih injured 13 people, including 4 children.
As further talks are scheduled to end the war in Ukraine, attacks still continue. 1 person was killed in the southeast of the country and 20 others were injured, according to local officials. In the Zaporizhia region, 4 strikes hit a local town. Homes, schools and critical infrastructure were damaged. Russia says it targeted energy sites supporting Ukraine's military, while Ukraine reported striking a Russian oil facility and military targets in Crimea. Both sides say multiple drones and missiles were intercepted. On the ground, Ukraine is facing its harshest winter of the war yet. Heavy snowfall and freezing temperatures have made life on the streets of Kyiv dangerous. Russian strikes on energy facilities have made the situation much worse as residents try to find ways to keep warm.
Cold weather, lack of heating, and no electricity. This is what has pushed people in Ukraine's Kyiv region to seek warmth. In the town of Brovary, old railway cars now turned into temporary shelters from the cold. Families, elderly residents, and relatives of Ukrainian soldiers use the decommissioned carriages as winter tightens its grip. The trains provide heat, electricity, and a brief escape from apartments left without power after recent attacks. Some say temperatures at home have dropped to 5 degrees Celsius. Inside the trains, people charge devices and have hot lunches, while children from an acting class hold lessons there because their usual premises are too cold.
If someone had told me that this would happen in Ukraine, I would never have believed them. No one wants this war. We want peace and goodness.
With temperatures falling as low as -20 Celsius in Kyiv, Ukraine is facing one of the coldest winters in years. Russia's missile and drone strikes on Ukraine's energy infrastructure in recent months have made the situation worse. As Russia continues its strikes, Ukrainian maintenance crews are working to restore a power plant.
We are restoring damaged infrastructure to provide people with electricity and heat, because not only electricity depends on this infrastructure, but also people's heating. The weather conditions are against us now. It is very cold, but we are not stopping. We are working to restore as much equipment as possible after the attacks as soon as possible.
Now 4,000 buildings in Kyiv remain without heating, and nearly 60% of the city is without power following days of Russian attacks on Ukraine's power grid.
The French Navy has intercepted a Russian tanker in the Mediterranean. The vessel is suspected to be part of the so-called Shadow Fleet, which enables Russia to export oil despite sanctions. French President Emmanuel Macron said the interception was carried out with Allied support and in full compliance with international maritime law. It happened in international waters in the western Mediterranean between southern Spain and northern Morocco. Despite 19 European Union sanctions, Russia continues to export large volumes of oil, mainly to China and India. Spain's rail network is facing renewed scrutiny after a fourth accident in less than a week on Thursday. A commuter train collided with an arm of a crane in the southeast of the country, injuring a dozen people. It followed a high-speed train collision in the southern Andalusia region, which killed at least 43 people 4 days earlier.
In Brussels, European Union leaders held a minute of silence on Thursday in honour of victims from the train accidents in Spain as they met for talks on EU-US relations. The President of the European Council, Antonio Costa, expressed his condolences to the families and loved ones of those killed. The latest and fourth incident in less than a week was a commuter train that collided with a crane in southeastern Spain on Thursday. Officials said several people suffered minor injuries in the crash near the port city of Cartagena in Murcia region. It's after the first collision between two high-speed trains last Sunday near Ademuz in the south that killed at least 43 people. 2 days later, a commuter train derailed after a containment wall fell on the track due to heavy rain near the city of Barcelona. It killed the driver and seriously injured 4 passengers. On that day, the main train drivers' union called a nationwide strike over safety standards after that. Then there was a second less serious collision in the northeastern Catalonia region on the same day. Train drivers have announced strike action for the 9th, 10th and 11th of February, demanding stronger safety measures and improved infrastructure maintenance amid growing public concern over Spain's rail network.
Britain has approved a £453 million contract to modernise radar systems on its Typhoon fighter jet fleet. The upgrade comes amid rising security threats and forms part of a wider push to enhance military capability and long-term defence investment. Our correspondent Zainab Farizeh reports from Manchester.
The UK government has announced a major boost to its air defences, awarding a £453 million contract to upgrade radar systems on Typhoon fighter jets. The deal, worth about $608 million, have been handed to defence contractors including BAE Systems and Leonardo. Defence Secretary John Healey said the upgrade comes as security threats continue to grow, pointing to Russian drone attacks on Ukraine and incidents involving NATO airspace. He said the new radar capability would keep Britain secure at home and strengthen its position abroad. The Typhoon is the backbone of the UK's air defence fleet, and the country's upgrades to the fleet are important not just to protect the UK, but to encourage other countries to order the jets, helping sustain production lines and jobs at home. The government also says the investment is about more than security. It is designed to support the UK economy. Ministers argue that modernising the Typhoon fleet will make the aircraft more attractive to overseas buyers, helping to sustain production lines and protect skilled jobs. Officials say the contract will secure more than 1,500 jobs across Britain. In October, the UK secured an £8 billion deal to sell Typhoon jets to Turkey, and officials believe further sales to Qatar and Saudi Arabia could follow. The government has also pledged to increase defence spending to 2.6% of GDP from 2027, signalling a long-term commitment to military investment. Zainab Farizeh, E-News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
The US has announced its plan to rebuild Gaza, including skyscrapers, new housing and major infrastructure after 2 years of war. But the United Nations warned that urgent humanitarian needs on the ground remain severe.
Skyscrapers in Gaza. That's President Donald Trump's plan for the Strip, with up to 180 high-rise towers in a sweeping reconstruction vision. The United States has outlined an ambitious blueprint to rebuild Gaza from the ground up, following 2 years of conflict.
It's going to be a great plan.
It was presented at the World Economic Forum in Davos by Trump and his newly created Board of Peace, which is tasked with ending the war between Israel and Hamas and overseeing reconstruction and development. Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, presented designs showing modern housing estates, industrial zones and tourism areas along the coast. It includes a new seaport and airport near the Egyptian border, as well as 2 major urban projects known as New Rafah and New Gaza. New Rafah would include more than 100,000 permanent homes, medical facilities.
Number one thing is going to be security. Obviously, we've been working very closely with the Israelis to figure out a way through de-escalation. And the next phase is working with Hamas on demilitarization, which I'll talk about in a second. But without security, nobody's going to make investments. Nobody's going to come, build there. We need investments in order to start giving jobs.
According to Kushner, funding is expected to come initially from governments, followed by private investors. Before that vision is realized, shorter-term goals for the first 100 days are more immediate. They include restoring basic services such as water, electricity and sewage systems, reopening hospitals and bakeries, and allowing more goods to enter the Strip.
Since Sunday, as of yesterday, our partners leading on emergency shelter assistance have reached over 13,000 households, distributing hundreds of tents and tarpaulins. Our partners distributing hundreds of tents. Yeah. Our partners also continue to distribute mattresses, sleeping bags, blankets, warm clothes, cooking. It's not funny. Cooking utensils, as well as solar lights. Our partners responsible for site management report that due to the capacity and funding constraints, they are currently able to provide support in just about 40% of the existing 970 displacement sites that exist across Gaza.
Displaced residents in Khan Yunis have expressed skepticism that the initiative would bring tangible change. Several said bombardment and insecurity persist, despite announcements of ceasefire phases and reconstruction plans.
But back in Davos, US President Donald Trump launched his Board of Peace setup to oversee the reconstruction of Gaza and tackle its humanitarian issue. Surrounded by world leaders at the stage, Trump declared the war in Gaza was really coming to an end.
US President Donald Trump officially launched his Board of Peace on Thursday during a ceremony at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Leaders from 19 countries joined Trump on stage to sign the board's charter, including Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev, Argentina's Javier Milei, Hungary's Viktor Orban, Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan, and Pakistan's Shehbaz Sharif. Trump called the board's members stars and described the initiative as a board of action.
It's going to be a great plan, and that's where the Board of Peace really started. And I think we can spread out to other things as we succeed with Gaza. We're going to be very successful in Gaza. It's going to be a great thing to watch, and we can do other things. We can do numerous other things. Once this board is completely formed, we can do pretty much whatever we want to do, and we'll do it in conjunction with the United Nations. I've always said the United Nations has got tremendous potential, has not used it.
US Secretary of State Marco Rubio praised the initiative as a group of leaders that is about action, emphasizing its focus on delivering results rather than issuing statements. The board was initially conceived as part of Trump's 20-point Gaza ceasefire plan, aimed at demilitarizing and rebuilding the region, but the charter leaves room for a broader geopolitical role. About 35 nations have committed to joining the board, with invitations extended to roughly 60 others. Several European allies declined to participate, including Norway, Sweden and France, citing concerns the board could undermine the UN. The UK opted out over Russia's inclusion, and Canada, Ukraine and China had yet to confirm. Countries seeking permanent membership must contribute $1 billion, with Trump designated as permanent chairman, while non-paying members receive a 3-year term.
And a country that had yet to accept US President Donald Trump's offer onto the border peace has subsequently been withdrawn. Trump announced the move in a Truth Social post addressed to Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney. He reversed the invitation that Canadian officials said last week Ottawa had planned to accept. The decision comes after Mr. Carney's speech at the World Economic Forum in Davos, where he criticised powerful states for using tariffs and economic integration as political tools.
Wide open to any.
The required one-year notice period for the US to leave the World Health Organization came to an end on Thursday. US President Donald Trump signed an executive order last year, January, to withdraw the US from the WHO on his first day back in office. This triggered a one-year withdrawal process under the WHO's charter. But according to the organization, all membership dues need to be settled. Currently, the United States owes $260 million in unpaid dues for 2024 and 2025. TikTok's Chinese owner, ByteDance, has finalized a deal to create a new joint venture to keep the app operating in the United States and avoid a potential ban. The agreement sets up a majority American-owned company with US and international investors holding 80.1%, while ByteDance retains a 19.9% stake. The move follows years of scrutiny over TikTok, which is used more than 200 million Americans, and the dates back to 2020, when the US President Trump first sought to block the app over national security concerns.
No, we have a lot.
In New Zealand, 2 people have died and 6 are still missing after landslides hit a campsite in the North Island. Torrential rain at Mount Maunganui caused damage to homes. Locals describe the devastation as emergency teams continue their search.
2 people have died, including a Chinese national, as emergency services in New Zealand raced to find 6 others missing after landslides struck the North Island. The main disaster hit a busy campground at Mount Maunganui on the east coast around 9:30 in the morning on Wednesday. Heavy rainfall sent soil and debris crashing onto the site, where families had been enjoying the summer school holidays. Police said the fatalities occurred in a separate landslide on Thursday in the nearby suburb of Papamoa. Residents described the impact, sharing first-hand accounts of damaged homes, blocked waterways, and widespread devastation.
So we were at home. My father lives up the road and basically said his next door neighbour's house was destroyed, and this place has got a big slip behind it and a massive clean-up for the kiwi fruit orchard and things like that. So,
I mean, I think we all kind of slept through it, but waking up it was pretty incredible, the devastation, just water everywhere, all over the driveway. You know, we had a stream that's all blocked, spilling its banks.
Authorities cautioned that rescue operations could take several days due to the scale of the damage. Road closures in the worst-hit areas mean some towns on the North Island remain temporarily isolated. Emergency crews continued combing through the rubble on Friday, hoping to locate those still missing. Officials have urged residents and visitors to avoid the affected zones and follow safety instructions as recovery efforts continue.
The restart of the world's largest nuclear power plant was suspended in Japan. It was stopped just a day after it went online for the first time in 14 years. The Kashiwazaki Kariwa plant in Niigata province had been closed since 2011 for the Fukushima disaster, but operations relaunch. It began on Wednesday after it received the final green light from the nuclear regulator. But after the suspension, the operator says it does not know when the problem will be solved. Gold and silver prices are surging to unprecedented levels. The precious metal has reached high numbers, while silver and platinum have also made key gains. The rise has been powered by geopolitical and economic uncertainties, including a weaker dollar and buyers wanting safer assets to invest in. But the impact is being felt the most in India because gold is imported and priced in US dollars against a weaker rupee. Financial markets across the world have become increasingly nervous due to rising political tensions and the risk of a fresh trade conflict. With just over 2 weeks to go until the 2026 Winter Olympic Games, preparations in the Italian town of Cortina d'Ampezzo are ramping up. However, the final stages come amid criticism over construction sites and the impact of the Games on the city.
The 2026 Olympic Winter Games are just over 2 weeks away, with Italy's mountain town of Cortina d'Ampezzo in the final phase of preparations. Cortina is one of several venues in northern Italy set to host events under the Milano Cortina 2026 banner. Local organisers say all work will be completed on time, but the resort remains dotted with construction sites and cranes as crews race to meet the deadline. The Games are scheduled to run from February 6th to February 22nd. One of the most pressing projects is the Apollonio Socreeps cableway, designed to transport thousands of spectators from the town centre to the Tofane Alpine Skiing Centre, where the women's downhill races will take place. The cableway has drawn criticism over its location in a landslide-prone area and has faced legal challenges from local residents seeking to halt construction.
They are now installing a new cableway which crosses the fields of Mortisi, which is a very beautiful part of Cortina. The environmental impact of this is also really high. On top of that, it has been constructed on a landslide, so there are huge problems regarding stability.
There are some strong economic and political powers which are working together. They are damaging all of the environment in favour of a kind of extractivism or ecological imperialism, meaning that they had already made big investments, and so now they want the economic result.
Residents in Cortina remain divided. While some welcome the economic boost and exposure the Olympics are expected to bring, others have raised concerns about the environmental impact of the Games.
I am in favour because it makes the place alive. I'd say that's good. Later on, we will see what happens. But now, in the starting phase, it is going well.
I am very much in favour of the Olympics. I've been a big athlete myself, so it couldn't be any other way. Sadly, it will be like it was in 1956. We had the Olympics and then sold all of the town because people found out about the beauty of Cortina.
Nestled in the Dolomites, Cortina is one of Italy's best-known winter resorts and previously hosted the Olympics in 1956. Dubbed the Queen of the Dolomites, the town has a population of around 5,500 and no rail connection, making road traffic the primary access route.
Now let's take a look at the major stories from the region. President Donald Trump says he hopes to avoid new US military action against Iran. The comment comes as Washington sends a major military force to the Middle East. He says a big force is moving toward Iran and that he's watching the country very closely. The two US officials says an aircraft carrier strike group and other assets will arrive in the region in the coming days.
You know, we have a lot of ships going that direction just in case. We have a big flotilla going in that direction, and we'll see what happens. We have a big force going toward Iran. I'd rather not see anything happen, but we're watching them very closely. I stopped 837 hangings on Thursday. If they would have been dead, every one of them would have been hung. This is like from 1,000 years ago. This is an ancient culture.
The United Nations says it has taken over management of detention sites in northeastern Syria. It's after Kurdish-led forces guarding them withdrew following clashes with Syrian government troops. The facilities hold tens of thousands of women and children linked to Islamic State, raising concern over security and humanitarian access. The SDF pullback has affected major sites, including Al-Hol, where Syrian government forces have now established a security perimeter, and UN teams have begun assessments. However, they say that access remains restricted.
Our colleagues tell us that the situation in the camp remains rather tense and volatile, with reports of looting and burning. As a result, it was not possible for them to enter the camp itself. And this was the same situation today when they tried again.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has urged the Kurdish-led SDF to disarm, warning that continued fighting in northern Syria would lead to further bloodshed. Our correspondent Adam Morrow has more from Istanbul.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has called on the Kurdish-led SDF to lay down its arms to prevent further bloodshed in northern Syria, which in recent days has seen fierce fighting between SDF fighters and Syrian government forces. Erdogan's remarks follow a 4-day ultimatum issued by the Syrian government, giving the SDF a deadline to disarm, disband its structures, and integrate its fighters into Syria's state military apparatus. Speaking to members of his AK party in parliament, Erdogan said Turkey welcomed this week's ceasefire deal between the SDF and Damascus. He said he hoped the group's full integration into state institutions would usher in what he described as a new era in Syria. Erdogan said disarmament was the SDF's only way out, adding that further violent actions by the group would amount to a suicide attempt. He also called on Kurds in Turkey not to fall for what he described as provocations by the SDF, stressing that his government was continuing an ongoing peace process with the Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK. Addressing lawmakers, Erdogan also described a Wednesday phone conversation with U.S. President Donald Trump as productive, saying the two leaders had discussed ways to ensure Syria's security and to step up joint efforts against the ISIS terrorist group. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
President of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, held talks with US President Donald Trump in Davos on Thursday. The two leaders discussed the development of Azerbaijan-US relations following President Trump's return to office. They also exchanged views on regional issues, including steps toward normalizing relations between Azerbaijan and Armenia and border connectivity projects in the South Caucasus. Azerbaijan Soccer is acquiring a 10% stake in Beyleen Oil and the gas project off the Ivory Coast. The deal with Italy's multinational energy company Eni was signed in Davos during the World Economic Forum. Beyleen is one of West Africa's largest offshore discoveries, which began production in 2023 and is set to expand significantly in its next development stage. That's the news for this hour. Make sure you stay tuned to A News and for more further updates. Take care.